Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time, welcome to the channel. And I've got another Batman cape for you on this video. No painting whatsoever on this at all. This is where we want to get to. Well, at least one of them. This is one of the capes that I'll be showing you how to achieve today. Let's get started. So I've been doing some learning myself, and I've learned how to do piping on this sewing machine. And that's joining 3 pieces of fabric with one in the center to carry a cord to give it a decorative edge, which turns out really well for capes because we can hide the wire in this little pocket and hide the seam or any of the stitching. So it makes it really convenient. It's done by putting a cord into a folded piece of fabric like you see here, carrying it off to one edge, and then sewing very close to that cord and, well, trying to stay as close as possible without stitching the cord itself. And there is a correct presser foot for your sewing machine. This one is not. I ended up having to purchase that presser foot. And wow, what a difference. Very easy to do that with the presser foot. Here I was struggling, just struggling to keep this straight and to keep it from pinching the cord. I did, however, manage it, but that presser foot made a big difference. In any case, let's get to the cape. It's pretty much the same outlines that I've done before, except that in this cape, it's going to be larger because the customer wants it to come from in front of the chest, not on the shoulder. So he wants to wrap the entire figure. So this is my cord, or my piping cord that I have in there. This is what I ended up with my first cape, just to practice using the piping, and it looks okay. I like it. But there's issues with that cape, and it's just too short. So I've cut a longer one, a bigger one. This is a 12 by 12. This is also a synthetic material. It's not a cotton. The blue one that you saw earlier is. And as you see, we want to fold it in on the edges to make sure that it has a correct length. And it does. However, once we sew it together, it may come a little smaller. Because it's supposed to come from the front of the chest area, it's going to limit the amount of range that it can raise over its head. So it's not going to have that dynamic look because it's a smaller cape coming from the front of the chest, not the back of the neck. Now, the cowl on this figure is not glued on. It just slides off when you pop off the head. And then you can disassemble the cowl itself because there's a liner on the underneath that holds that tiny fabric cape. But getting back to this cape, if this is all you wanted to do is keep it a shorter cape, you can certainly do so. You don't have to cut it as a pie all the way up. 12 by 12 is what I cut down, and then I added the piping. Now, I finally got a hold of a presser foot that has the grooves for the piping. See the foot on the right? There's 2 grooves on the bottom. So you can keep it left or right of the needle depending on the machine you have. I ended up having to use the one on the right, the channel on the right, to keep the needle on the left side. And it worked out so well because it just glides right through, keeping the cord on one side and stitching straight on the other. And here you go. This is what it looks like once it's attached. So I won't drag you through the whole thing. You initially just attach it facing the correct side that you want shown, and then you sew the opposite side in. You want to sew over the line that you are, or that you've already stitched in to hold the cord, so that when you turn it over, you hide the stitching and you have this really nice clean edge. So now it's time to cut the liner on the inside, and I chose a blue cotton. Now, the animated series uses blue to show shading, not that the cape actually has blue in it. In this case, this blue cotton will act as a liner for the cape. And again, it's a 12 by 12. I'm using a paper template to match the other side that I've already cut, which is the black. That way, when I meet them together, that piping will match up and the edges. Well, I'm going to try to match the edges as best as possible. But if I cut them together, the materials tend to slide. Even if you do pin it, sometimes the edges tend to stretch and you get some bad edges. So it's just easier to cut it individually. I'm using a wedge of soap, as I've shown in one of my prior videos, simply because you can erase the soap lines instead of pencil or actual pen or marker. So it's just safer on the material and easier to work with. And it's less expensive. So now let's join the two colors and with the piping in the center and give it that decorative edge. Here it is finally added together. I won't take you through the whole process because all you're doing is stitching them together. Holding it with the pins, it makes it easier. Now I've gone ahead and matched up my edges and I glued them down together so that when I cut my scallops, the fabric is not sliding all over the place because there's two pieces of material, the cotton and the fabric that's on top, the black. I'm not sure exactly what material it is, but in any case, when they're together, they do tend to slide. So by gluing just the very, very edge, and I know I'm going to cut and lose a lot of those glued edges because I'm cutting scallops. Now, I've folded it in half once the glue is dry, once my edges are fairly uniform, and I've clipped the left side of the cape. This is the top and the bottom, and now I'm going to take a piece of, just this core of the masking tape and mark it out with, again, a wedge of soap. That way I can have somewhat of a line to follow, and of course if you're doing this, you gotta make sure you've got a new blade in your cutter. If you've got a bad blade or one that is dull, it's going to make it incredibly difficult to cut, especially with materials like cotton because they fray easy. And if you've got a dull blade, it's just going to tear up the material. Now have a good look at how a new blade cuts through the material. It cuts it just like butter. So nice. Unfortunately, these blades are incredibly expensive and they don't last very long. They get dull very quickly, depending on the material you're cutting. But in this case, there's only 5 blades to a pack, and it's $30. So just be very careful and just use them sparingly when you actually have to cut something. Don't use them to cut paper or other nonsense. Use them for your material only. Now, once you've got it cut, you can match it up and you can actually iron out or iron in all of the splines on the scallops to make it look that much nicer on the figure. Now each cape is different, so the install for each cape is going to be different. For this particular case, the cape itself will install like many others, drilling into the neck and gluing just a piece of the wire that is inside that rib or that decorative piping that we added. And this is going to depend on where on the figure you want your cape. So if your cape is on the shoulders, then you want to drill into the shoulder and add the wire in there. Add the glue to the wire, not the actual perforation you made into the surface, because you want the glue to be carried by the wire into that hole that you drilled, and then allow it to dry sufficiently so you can actually handle the figure. Now in this case, we've added the piece of rubber that holds to the back of the cowl on the cape itself. I actually sewn that in, and now I'm attaching the wires to the neck. I am not gluing this figure or the cape to the figure because this cape is not mine. This is a commission cape, so I want to be able to remove it easily and send it to the customer who requested it. But this cape is not the final cape. This is actually my third cape right here, and it's got a few mistakes that I'm going to show you that need correction. Now remember that the cape is supposed to cover the chest, but take a look at how the sides of the cape fall over the shoulders. It doesn't fall naturally, and that's what I want to show you in the next clip. Even though the cape could be considered the correct size, and it does have some mobility because of those wires, and actually this is a 24 gauge wire. Now I'm going to glue the cowl to the piece in the back just to hold it in, because that's what's going to hold the cape in. There is nothing attaching the cape to the actual body except the clip or the ball joint that's in the back of the neck, or I should say in the head itself going into the neck. Let me show you on the clip what I'm talking about. The cape doesn't fall naturally on the sides. It has a flared out look. I love the texture of this synthetic material. I think it's a rayon. I love the piping in the front, and it's got the correct length in the back. I like the fact the figure can stand because it's a light material. Even with the two materials together, the blue and the black, are not overwhelming the stance of the figure that it falls over. And these figures are pretty difficult to get to stand. But this is the 24 gauge wire, and you can flare the cape out because it's a light material and it is a smaller cape. But it is a 12-inch cape here. That's why we're able to flare it out like this. I love the way this looks. However, once again, I don't like the fact that it doesn't lay naturally over the shoulders. If you're going to display this cape, this is really all you can do. And you don't want to have just one look on the cape. Now, I don't have it attached to the figure. That's why I'm also limited on the poses that I can do with this 24 gauge wire. So I've got to switch it out to be able to get more out of this cape. And the best thing to do is just to remake the cape. This time I'm going to try pleather and a spandex, a blue spandex, because I'm out of the cotton. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So now I've opted for a 14-inch pleather and spandex cape. So it's 2 inches bigger because I want it to fall down further onto the ground, and because it's a heavier material and it's actually a little bit thinner, and even though it's heavier because it's going to be a larger cape, it actually falls naturally over the shoulders. You still have to manipulate the cape, of course. Now I've also opted for a 20 gauge wire to be able to hold this heavy material. The 24 gauge just was not enough, and it was really difficult. And you'll see in just a moment that the actual cape was resting on the arms to be able to support it, and by switching it to the 20 gauge, it was so much better. Now this is the cape, and let me show you the fourth and final cape. And I did repeat all my other steps to make this one. I just made it 2 inches larger. So what I want you to observe here is the difference between 24 gauge wire and the 20 gauge wire. The way it suspends the cape is a significant difference, and it can really mean, well, how that cape is going to look on your figure. So take a look, and I hope you learned something by watching it. Now let's have a look at the same cape, but replaced with a 20 gauge wire, and this really makes a difference. Now this wire suspends the cape really well on its own with no help from the arms. Now it is a 20 gauge wire, it's a lot thicker, a lot stronger, so I did not drill this one into the neck, I didn't have to. I actually just looped it around the back of the neck and then cinched it in the front. Again, this is only temporary on my figure. I hope that you liked the video, I hope it was helpful, and I hope that you learned something with this. And of course, if there's any comments or questions, leave them in that box and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Don't forget, we still have not reached 6,000 subscribers. There's still room to win that custom Wally West. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of the clip. We'll see you here next time. Are you a fan of the Flash and all other related characters? You might have the new one from Mcfarlane, but if you did a head swap with this custom sculpt, you would have Wally West to complete your entire lineup. So don't hesitate to like, comment, and subscribe. This is an incentive to give you, well, an incentive to be a subscriber. And if you comment more than once, you have more probability of winning this custom painted sculpt for your custom figure. So don't forget to follow the instructions that are popping up on the screen now. And don't forget, we'll see you here next time.